Bridezilla cousin crashes other cousin's wedding. So, I'll start off with say that my 28F cousin K, 30F, and I have never gotten along. She's always treated me like absolute crap and made it a point to try to take as much from me as possible, to include randomly getting a degree in one of the fields I was working on getting mine in, just so she could say I copied her. She's done tons of very similar things our whole lives. Well, I ended up getting married and having a kid before her, but since that was during the global issue, we haven't had a formal wedding. K got engaged and then demanded I don't have my wedding around the same time as her after she quickly booked a venue. Her wedding is this October, and a few weeks ago she had her mum call mine, their sisters, to tell her that they've decided to have a strict no-child wedding because they don't want it to be ruined, but that she hopes my husband and I can still come. My mum promptly informed her that we most likely wouldn't, since it was in another state with no other friends or family nearby, which would make childcare very difficult. They got into a fight about it with my aunt, accusing her of taking the attention away from K, or something. My aunt then texted me too with a very different tone, telling me that it was child-free and such. My mum also called me and told me she understands if I don't want to go and supports me, especially with how K has always treated me. Around that same time, my other cousin, C, 37M, on the same side, called me to tell me he had proposed to his girlfriend, but they weren't able to get the venue that they wanted and had to opt for the tiny outdoor chapel at their church. He said because of that they could only have a small amount of people and decided to only do immediate family and aunts and uncles. He said he hates that I won't be there and feels bad they couldn't invite everyone. I told him I completely understand because I know how expensive weddings are and that I was super excited for them regardless. I also suggested we go to dinner together sometime to celebrate instead. Well, a few days ago my mum tells me that my aunt and K will be in town to give me a heads up since they'll want to visit. She told me that they had decided to let K take my uncle's seat so she could go to C's wedding instead. C is super upset about this because he knows she's doing this on purpose to run it in my face and get what she wants. Essentially, she's allowed to have strict rules for her wedding but can do whatever she wants and other people's, which is very typical of her. I'm just glad C already knows, so it's not a surprise to him and his bride-to-be. To make it worse, my aunt had apparently called him to ask, and as he was saying no, she had already booked K's plane ticket. I wish I could come up with something subtle but snarky to say to her when I see her next, but I can't think of anything that's not super obvious. Side note, I'm super glad K is getting married before I have my formal, public wedding. We did a courthouse one, just the two of us, so that she doesn't decide to do anything dramatic like get proposed to or something. Also, I found out that apparently she hid her now fiancé from her family and friends for a few months because she didn't think he was attractive enough, and was embarrassed. I so wish I could tell him that, but I'm not supposed to know that info. I'm really tempted to not invite her to my eventual one, but she's probably just crash it too. The tale of the Ancilla. More so an Ancilla than a Bridezilla, but maybe this sub will get a kick out of it. This happened at my wedding and the story still gets me. About 4 years ago, my husband and I got married. We had about 150 guests and overall the day was pretty incredible. This story has to do with my father's sister, someone I truly don't even want to call an aunt because she simply is the worst. By obligation, she and her husband were invited to the wedding. The story is retold mostly by my brother, but I was witness to a lot as well. The evening starts with her telling her waiter that she will need a place to have a meltdown once the father-daughter dance starts, as she was going to be so overwhelmed for whatever reason, bringing attention to the fact that she was none too pleased. The song my father and I danced to was one that my grandfather, his father, sang to me all the time. My brother was playing the piano and singing it. My father and I were dancing, but in the corner of my eye, I see this woman sobbing. She didn't go to another room like she had to request before everything. She just loudly sobbed at the table, bringing everyone's attention to her. During this she also took my brother's seat at the table, which really wasn't a good move as he already had enough of her antics. The night went on and honestly I am not cognizant on how the next events came to play, but my brother ended up saying something to her and then her husband put his hands on my brother, poking him in the chest. My brother isn't a fighter, other than words, and did not cause commotion. He simply let the situation be handled by others as he didn't want to ruin my wedding by making a scene. I can't remember if they left immediately after or waited for my grandmother, who was 88 at the time, to be done enjoying her night. However, when they did leave, this woman grabs me by the arm and says, "You better say good night and goodbye to your grandmother," as I was already walking over towards her. My grandmother is my best friend, I call her every day, and she saw this happen. She was heartbroken as she knew this was going to be the last straw. The evening wasn't ruined by any means, but from that day on we always remember this outburst. Now, her daughter is getting married. Fortunately, I am not invited and neither is my brother. My father is invited, however my aunt did not make it clear and purposely left my mother off the invitation. She wanted to cause some drama and continue to try to isolate my father for herself like she's tried for years. It's never once worked. She responded to his decline saying he will not go without my mother with IDK why she doesn't think she can come. When literally she only sent the invite to him. Luckily for everyone involved, my now 92-year-old grandmother included, no one will be attending this out-of-state wedding as it falls on my son's, the first grandchild in the family, birthday as well as the same holiday weekend my husband and I married on, and no, I don't think it's a total coincidence, I do believe there was some malicious intent. She has no idea why we don't want her around us and why we stopped talking. My wife ruined our wedding for me. We are lesbians, 26 years old, we met in high school. She's British, I'm Greek. Despite the fact that I have never lived in Greece, I know our traditions and values and wanted to honor my family and Greek friends by adding some touches of that on my wedding. My wife didn't like any of the ideas I presented her with as she considered everything too old-fashioned or that it didn't match her ideal aesthetic. She also added an extreme amount of rules, and while with some of them I was also on board, others were too much, and I told her that no Greek family member of mine would enjoy or even show up with these rules. Some examples were that people were not allowed to smoke at all at the wedding despite the fact that our venue would be outdoors and smokers would be allowed. She banned it. I told her Greek people consider smoking part of socializing if they do smoke, and a great amount of my Greek circle smokes. She also dismissed the fact that I am very family-oriented and in Greek weddings kids being present is the norm, and I told her I didn't want many kids but I'd love for my little cousins and nieces to be there, a total of 4 kids, and they're well behaved, and she said no to that too because we're doing it her way. Many of my Greek relatives were displeased with the no kids rule and wouldn't find babysitters because it's not a concept they're familiar with at weddings. That's just how they grew up. And while I realized that we won't invite kids and many people would skip, I realized this mostly affected once again my side. My sister ended up not attending because she couldn't find a babysitter she could afford. I told my wife if we could at least help my sister pay for the babysitter so she can come at the wedding, but my wife said no. She also forbid me from helping my sister out. By the way, my sister is divorced and her ex is not in the picture at all. We thought it would be a cool idea for our respective bridesmaids to have different colored dresses. Hers would be in emerald green. I wanted mine to be in royal blue, but my wife once again was against it and enforced her own choices. Due to the ban my wife enforced on me not using any Greek traditional elements for the wedding, many of my relatives found it disrespectful and skipped the wedding altogether since it would be a destination wedding and they didn't believe it was worth it to spend all that money just to be disrespected by my wife and her side of the family. Many people from her side ended up skipping as well because of her strict rules, which I do not have enough characters to list. We ended up only having 35 people from the 89 we originally planned on having. And most of them left early too. I swear I'm living in a wedding twilight zone. First, I posted twice about a wedding for which I'm part of the bridal party and there was an entire fiasco about venues and scheduling. I really don't have the energy to give a decent synopsis, but the update is pretty much that I checked out from the stress of the situation and have been focusing on work and my own life, but I have talked to the Sil about doing a July baby shower for her and she has been the most pleasant and lovely person I think I've ever met. I'm definitely hoping to become friends with her. Here's today's bizarre occurrence. Fake names used. During the pandemic, my partner and I became very close with the other residents in our apartment complex as they were the only people we interacted with during lockdown. We became good friends with Eric, now 33 meters, and he and my partner actually became quite close over their shared fascination with obscure technological advances like cleanroom railways and the layout of Paris for tram-like cycling lanes. IDK, it's not my thing, so I can't explain it well. Anyway, Eric got into a graduate program at MIT in 2021 and moved to Boston, where he met Amy. They're both very nice people, so nothing against their character in this situation. Eric and Amy get engaged just after Thanksgiving 2022, so a few months ago. Then message us. We have a big Zoom celebration call with mutual friends, and it was great. Everyone was happy. Since then, nothing has been said about the wedding, though. Here's where I'm contemplating my grasp on reality. It's customary to wait for save the dates or invitations, right? Like, those aren't outdated traditions, customs, wedding etiquette? This morning, I sent my friend's Mother's Day texts and sent one to Amy, via a group chat with Eric, Amy and me, my partner, since she has a young daughter, 4 maybe? She was 2 when Eric and Amy met, so I'm just guessing. Amy responds with a message saying thank you and asking how my partner and I have been. My partner replies wishing her a happy Mother's Day and saying something about a tech advancement he's been following. I respond as well with a generic, "We've been good, life is really busy." This is when Eric enters the chat. In reply to my partner's technology comment, he says, "I can't wait to hear about it. Are you getting in on Thursday or earlier?" Several messages of confusion and attempts for clarification are exchanged. Turns out, yep, the wedding is this Friday. Oh, how are we supposed to know? We were supposed to ask them when their wedding was scheduled. The F, right? Facts. The wedding is set for a Friday. My partner is a teacher and his students are beginning their exams. I have to work. Truth, it ain't gonna happen. We tried to explain the practical nature of how we can't make it on last-minute notice. It didn't go over well. There was a phone call that was heated. Ultimately, threats of no longer being friends arose, which really upset my partner since he is quite introverted and rarely meets other people with his niche interests. It's been an emotional and tense mornings, but we simply can't go on last-minute notice. Work, plane tickets, life, pet sitters, all of it, it's not gonna happen. But for real, are mailed invitations no longer a thing? Do people use email invites? Text? This is just all so bizarre to me. I'm currently scarfing down a box of donuts trying to make sense of this twisted string of wedding drama in my life right now. Why is wedding drama so exhausting, draining and stressful on an entire level of its own?